message?
From Professor Dumbledore.
Link down below. Now enjoy the stories. This one took place in Yorkshire, at Howstein Gorge. If there's any chance at all that you would jolly to the UK, but if you ever do, then I highly recommend Howstein. It's a tourist attraction, and there's a cave there called the Tom Taylor Cave, the Lion. They do school trips there, so there's a cafe, an activity center, and all sorts of stuff. It's a great place for week. It was just a small group of us, and it was an extracurricular trip that we saw accompanied by another teacher. Right from the start of the day, kids were whispering and nudging each other because Mr. Fisher kept jumping. As he came along, Fisher would act all weird and strange. It was like he thought everyone we encountered was He thanked us for being diligent and said he appreciated our efforts. Of course, this made us feel there's not really anything interesting to say about Jason. He was just a completely normal lad, not one of our friends, but not any kind of villain or school bully or really anything. And he looked very serious and grave, and he said that he couldn't tell us, but they had sent Jason on the trip. He told us that as his trusted lieutenant, he kept pulling us aside, whispering to keep an eye on this or that, or was having some harmless fun. You're not meant to suspect that the adult in charge of you is unfit to. He'd make sure to protect us. It was all a bit intense and scary from that our teacher would take things remotely this far. Glasses that react to light and the floodlights in the caves cause them to tint over. Either way, Fisher stopped the entire group and told us all to crowd into this alcove we were near. It's the one with the plaque that talks about mine. Hey lads, look at her. She's one of them. He explained that you could tell because she was wearing dark glasses indoors, and I remember getting really hung up on that. Like this being in a cave answer. That's not the point, though. The point is that Fisher told us the woman was watching us. Horrible things I'd ever seen. Even though I don't think Fisher did, it was just the feeling of helplessness that us kids had. Some of the girls were
all the time, like pre-play, you know. But I will hike to Lush, and I will see you guys there. I had to tune in and show y'all this fountain. Lush is that way. Oh, wait, I forgot to lock the door. It's empty. This is so exciting, and it smells amazing. But look, who is this guy? A mad scientist, alchemist, ghosts and magicians. You meet every single time I'm in the store. How cute. Oh my god, alien. I swear he was green last year, but look, he got a purple makeover this year. We have Bewitched. This guy, I've seen him before as well. Y'all, it does not feel like a whole year.
So the location was North Carolina in Moores Creek National Battlefield. There is these draw from Native American folklore, colonial era tales, field trails, shadowy figures in tricorn hats, marching at dusk, absolutely mental.
It is very hard to listen to that call to that 911.
County 911, what's the address of your emergency?
I'm driving on 210. I just crossed the Black River, and I thought I saw a guy standing on the side of the road bleeding.
Okay, where are you at, sir?
I'm on 210. I just crossed the Black River. I'm heading towards 53E. I just passed Patriots Launch.
Okay, so you're over near Moores Creek?
Yes.
Okay. And did you saw a man standing on the side of the road? What was that, sir?
That's not human! That's not human!
Sir, are you okay, sir?
There's something in the bed of my truck!
Okay, what's in the road?
No, it's not in the road. It's in my truck. In the bed.
There's something in the bed of your truck?
Yes, ma'am. I just turned on my bed light for my truck, and there's something in my bed.
Okay, sir, when you say something, what do you mean?
I just knocked it off of the bed of my truck and went over my roof.
Okay, what was it?
According to the CAD notes and the deputy reports, this thing jumped into the back of his pickup truck and began to actually beat on the top of the cab of his truck. You could actually hear something beating on the top of the truck. The caller stated that it was beating and scratching on the top of the cab of his truck. He actually stated that he was able to engage his bed light and was able to somewhat identify this object that was in the back of his truck. At some point, he was able to slam on his brakes, and the force of inertia actually threw this thing out over his hood and onto the highway, where this thing stood up in the roadway, made its way to the wood line, and disappeared in the woods.
Excuse me if there's a change of temper right now, okay, but I recorded this video a few days ago, and then today I found out, because I was scrolling through TikTok, I saw Hallucination Hippies, that he was covering this story, and then he's found an interview from this guy. So I've not seen it yet. I've managed to find it. I've saved the interview. Let's have a little look to see what this guy says about what he saw.
I guess I'll start from the beginning of the trip. I was coming up from Florida to visit my family. At the time, I was going to a trade school down there, and when I was driving up here to where the incident occurred by the battlefield, it was already easily like well into the morning. I wasn't looking at my phone. I just know it was pitch black outside, and it was pitch black. I couldn't see the moon, stars, nothing, just barely the road through my headlights. And I had my window down because the AC wasn't working the best. As I'm coming around, I had just started the curve, and I was about in that ditch wearing what looks like an old Civil War uniform, just covered head to toe in blood. And
Right, so it is the spirits that people claim to have seen. So it is that, right? I thought at first when I heard about this
to report that, because for all I know, it could have just been a normal guy that was injured and needed needed emergency help. It looked like what had happened is he let them know, hey, there's a guy out here, and try to find somewhere, say the car not human on the call, because I over my truck in a ball rolling.
Mate, was that right? Okay. Looked into like some people say skinwalker. Now I've looked into this rake, and apparently like this rake is a made up creature, right? From anything.
And
But what is the ones that lures you towards it? It makes you slow down and stop, which gives the weird, maybe it's like a shapeshifter. Or is, you know, those two beings have got something connected, I think. You saw the ghost, you freaked out, you white and skinny. Slenderman! No, that's a fucking game! Slenderman has been depicted in imaginary... Yeah. I have seen hundreds of these things at night in the woods, in the rural areas around Memphis. Whites. Tall whites? He would say about the black eyes, right? It also said no nose. These pale, lanky beings are said to be over 7 feet tall. What? And were made famous by former military weather observer Charles James Hall, who detailed his alleged...
Look on top of the cab, and on top of the cab, clear as day, you can see...
There's some type of disembodied head looking straight at us out the window. You know the stereotypical ghastly-looking, emaciated, gray, dead ghoul-looking trope? Do it as well. Even if you looked at it, it was right there in our stomping grounds, so we couldn't resist. And the place was called Undercliff Sanitarium. You get in with tuberculosis and other diseases, troubled children, one around the side. And by the time we got around to the back of the building, there were 3 squad cars surrounding us. We did have the right idea to park behind the building on a small concrete courtyard on the opposite side of where most of the surveillance actually was. Glove box, center console. There simply wasn't enough time for somebody to have picked all of that and then disappeared. The general area wasn't exactly the best. There were some hood projects down the street, but that wasn't it, as we're like a quarter mile into the woods. Not only that, but I would have expected, right? Such a short period of time and 2 significant paranormal encounters. Yeah, okay, but anyway, it started when I was 5 or 6, which would have been 1988 to 1989, and I would see what was called the Bloody Man, walking up and down the stairs in my house. I can't remember the middle of the night, but more like bedtime that this would know how to be scared. Now anyways, this person that I would see, I would come as my bedroom door started shaking. Thinking it might be my stepfather, we would open it as it was shaking and no one would be standing there. My friends and I would fight to hide in the corner of the bed while it would happen. So if you're keeping count, that's me and my sister who both saw the Bloody Man and heard. One thing I forgot to mention is the reason I moved back at 12 and 13 is my grandfather, the quote, he was too young at the time, but his mom, dad, and 2 brothers would always see my uncle behind them in mirrors in the house. All those years. Who refused to leave, drowned. Anecdotally, the old cemetery there during the camp took us to the... We only saw what our flashlights illuminated, and now the headlights of that he and Mom divorced. He said I might not understand till I was Mom had to go identify his body. She came home drunk in a cab and making sure all the wildfires in the area had either burned out or been contained. But it wasn't a case of just driving out to the thing. More like I didn't want to see the evidence of degenerate alcoholism or worse. Some fucks had been using it as some rutting post. It had one small window on its... And when I did, my jaw absolutely dropped. Almost every was not newly built. Either maybe he renovated it or built on top of it that I couldn't figure out. Whereas that said things like, found him sleeping here, or human scat, this very soft, incessant drone, and with the exhaustion of the day's hike finally setting in, I eventually found myself drifting off to sleep. I don't know how long I was out for, but I was jolted awake around 2:30 in the morning after hearing a noise that sounded way too confident to be an animal. Now the first thing I did, and possibly a warning, but a lone person out there in the middle of the night was definitely then. After a few seconds of waiting, a person shuffled into view. Now at first all I could do was just watch, stunned into silence by what quickly still aside from this very subtle swaying. And then out of nowhere, I wasn't staying. And then the moment that I made that point, the baggy Dad's name again, but the silence drew itself out, until suddenly, 24 hours. But I was still so wired after all that adrenaline that I didn't even think about sleeping until late that same afternoon. I called the Ranger HQ at Yukon to report what I'd seen, and told them out there in the woods. I probably wouldn't be the last either. But to date, he hadn't hurt anyone. He'd just give them a scare, emptying liquor bottles out there on my lonesome, till I, too, died hotel as if following some secret plan. Days later, 93, my college buddies and I were just about to start our junior year when we decided to meet up for a camping trip. Now, we'd been talking about it for almost a year. We drove down to a place called Fairholme, where there was a campground and a general store. And that was our landing zone, if you will, a place where that it was almost camouflaged against the backdrop of trees. The roof was windows we saw inside was covered with what looked like old camping stuff. On a table there was just crumpled up aluminum foil, a half-empty box of matches, and we agreed that we were looking at some kind of hiker's stopover, and that it'd be the perfect place to rest for a few hours before. I didn't imagine it to be really that interesting, like maybe some hiker just forgot his journal or something. But after reading that first entry, I'll be honest, I was hooked. The journal had been started by someone who was right at the beginning of what they called an adventure of a lifetime, and detailed their plan to basically live off the grid for the rest of their days. They talked about how incompatible they were with. Now, as you can imagine, I was actually pretty psyched to have found something like that. I could probably get this published if I tried. I walked back into the main room and told the gang about what first entries mostly detailed what the guy wanted to do, and how he wanted to do it, and what he hoped to achieve. But then as they continued foraging, it sounded scary, but exciting too, and it was thrilling to read how happy the guy was as everything he'd worked towards was starting to pay off. But then came the part day to day, and that meant that I went skipping ahead a lot to see if I could find any longer, more interesting entries about how he could hear the sky sing when it got really quiet, or how sometimes when he's killing a rabbit or a pigeon, it kind of felt like he was slaughtering his own self in some weird protective kind of way. He talked about